in the hot sun and pouring rain, thousands of Muslim and Christian women sat side by side on the Monrovian airfield, clothed in sackcloth and wearing ashes, to proclaim a message of peace. These women sat together, enduring harassment and beatings at the hands of the armed soldiers of Liberian President Charles Taylor. Driven by their faith and a desperate situation, they had come to protest against violence and government oppression. For more than 15 years, Liberia suffered the ravages of intense warfare. In 1990, two factions of the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, one led by Prince Johnson and the other by Charles Taylor, invaded the capital city of Monrovia. A bloody civil war resulted. Thousands of Liberian citizens were evacuated from their homes, and access to food, clean water, and adequate health care was nearly eliminated. Although a peace treaty was signed in 1995, violence continued. Murder, rape, and the use of child soldiers became commonplace, making living conditions unbearably dangerous, especially for women. By 2002, the women of Liberia had had enough. In that year, Lema Gabwe and Comfort Freeman, presidents of two different Liberian churches, began to speak out. They organized the Women in Peacebuilding Network, a group that encouraged recognition of the important role that women play in peace building. Determined to change their circumstances, the women of the Women in Peacebuilding Network issued a statement which read, "In the past, we were silent, but after being killed, raped, dehumanized, and infected with diseases, and watching our children and families destroyed, war has taught us that the future lies in saying no to violence and yes to peace. We will not relent until peace prevails." Inspired by the work of the Women in Peacebuilding Network, Asatu Ba Kenneth, Assistant Minister for Administration and Public Safety of the Liberian Ministry of Justice, formed the Liberian Muslim Women's Organization. These Christian and Muslim women joined together soon to create Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace. And together, they held peace vigils at churches and mosques, organized mass meetings at Monrovia's City Hall, and marched in the streets, proclaiming, "We want peace, no more war." Peace negotiations began in 2003, but the parties had not come to a peaceful resolution, and violence once more began to escalate. After a missile landed in the American and Muslim compound where many displaced Liberians were living, the women staged a sit-in. They staged a sit-in outside of the presidential palace, determined that no one would leave. No one would leave. No one would leave until a peace treaty was signed. A tentative treaty was signed, and the UN eventually charged Charles Taylor with crimes against humanity. The women of Liberia became a political force against violence, and later helped to bring to power the country's first female head of state, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. For the first time, Liberian women of different religions had come together, motivated by their faith, to denounce violence and transform their society. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus tells a story of a widow who faced down an unjust judge. She cried out for justice, and though the judge ignored her pleas, she kept at it, standing up again and again speaking truth to power, and ultimately wearing down those who would deny her petition and her dignity. As the women of Liberia and the persistent widow show us, though we may at times feel like our protests fall on deaf ears, like the evils we rail against are so large and complex that they may never be unraveled, if we can keep up the fight, bolstered by our faith in God and one another, then in the words of Sam Cooke, a change is gonna come.